Hello, friends. We begin today where we left off yesterday, which is that Donald Trump is debating whether or not he is going to go to war, bring our country to war on behalf of Israel. And what is incredible right now is that this, not anything else before, but this is potentially building a fracture that has been brewing inside of MAGA for quite some time. You see, when Donald Trump said America first, he ran as an person that was going to put America above all else and not interfere in foreign wars, that he was going to put an end to the quote unquote forever wars. And there are some inside of MAGA that took Donald Trump at his word. I have no idea why one would do that, but nonetheless, they did. And so now, here it is, where Donald Trump is making a decision as to whether or not he is going to enter into a war that has absolutely nothing to do with us, going against his own principles, his own America First agenda. And it has split the party, and the split continues to grow. So, which side will Donald Trump fall on? Lord only knows. But who is going to get the short end of the straw regardless? Oh, not just America, but potentially all of human civilization. All right, folks, buckle up. It's time for the Danielle Moodie Show, and I am so happy you're here. So we begin today where we left off, where the whole week has been situated around will or will not America go to war at the behest of Benjamin Netanyahu. And the fact is that this entire game that Donald Trump thinks that he's playing comes at great peril and great risk, not just to America, not just to Iran, but to the entirety of human civilization. And we're going to get to that later on in the show. But I'm going to start where things are right now, which is that Trump is suddenly raging at Tucker Carlson, and MAGA is deeply rattled. In opposition to, quote, forever wars, really a core pillar of MAGA republicanism, looks like we're about to find out. You may have heard it said that Donald Trump won in 2024 in part by vowing to end, quote unquote, forever wars. During the campaign, Trump ripped Democrat Kamala Harris for campaigning with Liz Cheney, slamming her for wanting, quote, war with every Muslim country known to mankind. News organizations credulously, which I can't ever pronounce right, insisted that this sort of anger over military entanglements in Iraq and Afghanistan fueled Trump's movement. Some even suggest that war fatigue, not his unflagging affection for Vladimir Putin, drove Trump MAGA opposition to arming Ukraine. A new battle between Trump and Tucker Carlson over Israel's war with Iran is severely undermining that understanding of MAGA. Carlson and MAGA podcaster Steve Bannon, among others, have been urging Trump not to deploy the U.S. military in tandem with Israel. Trump appears close to doing so, and people like Carlson and Bannon are loudly proclaiming that this would betray the MAGA movement, which in turn is angering Trump. Quote, somebody please explain to kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Trump raged on his broke down social media platform. On Monday, Trump also vented about this to reporters, declaring, "I don't know what Tucker Carlson is saying." Well, the fact that you have the man's name in your fucking mouth means that you absolutely do know what he's saying and that you disagree with it and you would like him to shut the fuck up. But this is what happens when you create monsters, right? That you no longer get to control. And we have to understand that Tucker Carlson and his fame was created by the Murdochs, by Fox. Then he became expendable when he spread the big lie, costing them money, but then took all of those followers and those viewers to his own platform. So he is still incredibly influential and has been influential inside of MAGA. And like I said earlier this week, even a fucking broken clock is right twice a day. And the fact that in one goddamn week, I'm agreeing with both Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson should have us know that we are currently living inside of hell. Okay? So the article goes on to say this in the New Republic. All this has deeply split the MAGA coalition. Carlson has denounced top Fox News figures like Sean Hannity for actively encouraging Trump to, quote, pursue direct U.S. military involvement abroad, slamming them as, quote, warmongers. In an online discussion, Carlson and Bannon argued that this threatens to drive away supporters who want to, quote, stop the forever wars, describing them as crucial to the MAGA coalition. And MAGA stalwarts like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene have sounded rattled as they urge Trump not to sell out MAGA here. Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a fucking moron. But on this one issue right now, actually says what Israel is doing in Iran has nothing to do with the United States. Why in God's name would we risk the lives of our soldiers and send them weapons and send bodies, whether they be in planes or not, to this region of the world to fight on behalf of Netanyahu? Carlson, when he was interviewing Cruz, said the very same fucking thing, right? Like, what are you talking about? Oh, we need to defend our allies. Frankly, we've done more than enough to aid and abet a genocide by providing all of the fucking weapons and artillery necessary to take down the Palestinians that, by the way, have no weapons. So here we are now at a point where the MAGA faction is like, so are we America first or are we not? Or are you a fucking liar? Which we all know that Donald Trump is, but the Donald Trump that MAGA has built up in their head believes that, oh, everything else that he does to those other people, but not us, not his base. He tells us the truth and tells it like it is. So if Donald Trump does end up, right, deciding to bomb Iran on behalf of Israel, he is betraying the very people who thought that he was all rah, 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 America, America. So the article goes on to say, but how deep does this supposed anti-war sentiment really run inside MAGA? Well, here's a test. Republican Representative Tom Macy on Tuesday introduced a House resolution barring Trump from entering into war with Iran without Congress's explicit authorization. It was co-sponsored by Democratic Representative Ro Khanna. This privilege measure will get a vote if House Speaker Mike Johnson doesn't procedurally thwart it. And we know this, that Fisher Price, Speaker of the House Part 2, is going to do whatever Trump tells him to do. Because if that resolution were to come up to a vote, we know where, well, I should say this, we know where some Democrats will fall, but we also know that this is where there is no differentiation between Republicans and Democrats, is when it comes to war with Muslim nations. Because we also have hawks and warmongers on our side as well. So this is what is announced today. that Trump will decide on Iraq attack within the next 2 weeks. Here's the latest according to the New York Times. Trump said on Thursday he will decide whether the United States will attack Iran within the next 2 weeks, adding in a statement released by the White House that, quote, there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future. This is apparently his new phrase. I may or I may not enter into war. I may or may not start World War III. No one knows what I'll do, and I like to do it in the last second. That's what he said yesterday. For days, Trump had mused publicly about the possibility of bombing Iranian nuclear sites, suggesting that strikes could be imminent, while also insisting that it was not too late for talks. With his comments on Thursday, he appeared to opt for some breathing room to give diplomacy a chance. But here's the thing. In the next 2 weeks, right, while the world holds its breath and wondering whether or not a sociopathic toddler is going to hit the red button and send us all careening into a war that we have no reason to be in, then triggering other allies in other spaces and places to be on high alert or choosing which horse that they're going to back in this fight, Donald Trump is going to see what happens. And in the meantime, the civil war is continuing to blow up. The Iran conflict is sparking a MAGA civil war. As Trump weighs next steps on Iran, there's a big debate among MAGA figures. So here is where the traditional GOP, I guess they were before MAGA, so the BM Republicans. And this is where some of them fall. And we've seen this before. So when you start to say to yourself, Danielle, why does this sound eerily familiar? Oh, we'll get to that. More traditional GOP foreign policy hawks, such as former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, are now advocating that the U.S. turn from diplomatic discussions to attacking Iranian nuclear sites. Quote, be all in, Trump, in helping Israel eliminate the nuclear threat, said Lindsey Graham on Fox News on June 16th. If we need to provide bombs to Israel, provide bombs. If we need to fly planes with Israel, do joint operations. So Lindsey Graham is fucking all in. Because guess what? He's not going to war. He's not flying the planes. And it's not going to be his fucking kids that are going there either. Conservative media figures such as Mark Levin and Hugh Hewitt also have encouraged Trump to take a forceful approach. Here's what these sociopaths have said. We need to stand behind our commander-in-chief. We need to stand behind the Israelis. We need to put this evil to rest. Take a listen. Once and for all, it's time to get rid of them. It's time to get rid of them? It's time to get rid of them. Is he talking about the supposed nuclear enrichment facilities, or is he talking about an entire country filled with innocent civilians, filled with mothers and fathers and children and spouses, and filled with actual human beings that have a right to self-determination and actualization? You see, everybody has an agenda here. Everybody inside of MAGA and also inside of the Democratic Party. Why I say that I don't want to go to war with Iran and I'm actually aligned for this moment in Black Mirror with Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is that this has nothing to do with us. It doesn't. Much in the same way that I believe that we shouldn't be backing Israel in genocide. I said that during the Biden administration. Biden had this romanticized vision and version of Israel in his mind, and everyone says, oh, they have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to defend. Why does no one else have a right to defend themselves then? Why are they the only nation in the Middle East that has a right to defend themselves? And so, what I continue to say is that American foreign policy is based on racism and discrimination. It's based on stereotypes and the flattening of people in the Middle East, as well as Islam as a religion. 2 billion people are practicing Muslims in this world, 2 billion plus. But what America has done, and American media has done, and American politicians have done, is create caricatures that turn all brown skinned Arabic speaking people into terrorists or being terrorist adjacent, meaning that they shouldn't have the right to exist whatsoever. And so, whether you are fed a lie or just itching for a fight, some people want to go to war in the Middle East again, one, because it's good for their bottom line and the investments that they have in weapons of mass destruction and how that's going to make them money. And then others are completely and totally Islamophobic and just believe that people of the Islamic faith shouldn't exist. And they will use any excuse in the book in order to have their wishes met. So, which side is it that Donald Trump is going to fall on? We don't know. But why does this seem so eerily familiar, with some of the same characters uttering the same lines that they did over 20 years ago? Oh, because it's the same load of shit. This is a piece David Corn wrote 2 years ago on the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq. He writes this: the Iraq invasion 20 years later, it was indeed a big lie that launched the catastrophic war. Bush and Cheney were not misled by flawed intelligence. They were promoting false information. He writes this 2 years ago in 2023. Before there was Donald Trump's big lie, there was George W. Bush's big lie. 20 years ago this week, Bush and his sidekick, Vice President Dick Cheney, launched a war against Iraq. They greased the way to this tragic conflagration with the false claims that Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein possessed an arsenal of weapons of mass destruction that directly threatened the United States, and that he was in league with Al-Qaeda, the perpetrators of the horrific September 11th attack. Their invasion, which led to the deaths of over 4,000 American soldiers and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians, and the violence and instability in the region that, guess what, resulted in ISIS, is now widely considered to have been a tragic blunder of immense proportions. 3 months before he died in 2018, Senator John McCain, a leading advocate of the war, and if you remember, sang a little ditty, bomb, 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 Iraq. In his book, The Restless Wave, which included a self-damning verdict, quote, the principal reason for invading Iraq, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, was wrong. The war, with its cost in lives and treasure and security, can't be judged as anything other than a mistake, a very serious one, and I have to accept my share of blame for it. 3 months before his death, his final book was published with what could only amount to a deathbed confession that you knew what many have been saying for years, that that war was based on a lie, not false information, but disinformation. and done so on purpose. David Corn goes on to write this. Other one-time cheerleaders for the Iraq War have voiced regret and occasional shame. In a 2018 book, Max Boot, an analyst who was once deeply ensconced in the world of neocon foreign policy, wrote, quote, "I can finally acknowledge the obvious. It was all a big mistake. Saddam Hussein was heinous, but Iraq was better off under his tyrannical rule than the chaos that followed. I regret advocating the invasion and feel guilty about all the lives lost." Well, isn't that nice? I'm sure the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians who lost their lives, and then others who would lose their lives to ISIS, would love to hear your heartfelt apology. 3 years later, New York Times columnist David Brooks, who had been a loud and naive beater of the war drums in 2003, opined, "The decision to go to war was a clear misjudgment." Last week in The Atlantic, David Frum, the pro-war speechwriter for Bush, who coined the term the axis of evil, phrase that justified targeting Iraq and North Korea and Iran, noted the decision to invade was plainly unwise and that the war was a misadventure. It's the language for me. This self-delusion argument, "we believed what we said," is often packaged with the contention that the Bush-Cheney crowd rendered their decisions on the basis of flawed intelligence that stated Iraq had WMDs. And thus, these leaders did not intentionally misrepresent that threat. But this is a phony narrative, or as I like to say, absolute and complete bullshit. The intelligence assessments that suggested Iraq possessed significant weapons of mass destruction and was close to developing a nuclear weapon, produced under tremendous pressure from the Bush White House, were often disputed by experts with intelligence inside of the community. Folks, here's the thing. George W. Bush and Dick Cheney should be in jail. They lied, and they knew that they lied. They were spreading misinformation and disinformation so that they could go to war, so that they could profit off of that war. Whether they were profiting personally or thought that they could wipe out a part of the Middle East and then extract oil, extract minerals, but nonetheless continue with the colonization that their forefathers are so good at by taking over areas that are minerally rich, wiping people out, lying about those people in order to justify and get the public's backing so that you can continue your genocidal project. Does this now ring familiar? Because here we are, where Donald Trump is currently losing confidence in Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard as he mulls removing her entire office. Now, why would Donald Trump do that? And here it is again. Because Tulsi Gabbard did the unthinkable a couple of days ago. She took to social media with a 3-minute video that I am absolutely going to play for you, because it just shows you what an upside down fucking world we are living in when Tulsi Gabbard, the alleged Russian asset, is trying to articulate the stakes of Donald Trump and these warmongers going to war on behalf of Israel. And folks, this video, well, you tell me how compelling you find it.
Recently visited Hiroshima in Japan and stood at the epicenter of a city that remains scarred by the unimaginable horror caused by a single nuclear bomb dropped in 1945, 80 years ago. It's hard for me to find the words to express what I saw, the stories that I heard, the haunting sadness that still remains. This is an experience that will stay with me forever. This attack obliterated the city, killed over 300,000 people, many dying instantly while others died from severe burns, injuries, radiation sickness, and cancer that set in the following months and years. Nagasaki suffered the same fate. Homes, schools, families, all gone in a flash. The survivors, the hibakusha, they carried the pain of extreme burns, radiation sickness, and loss for decades. Survivors of this attack were asked to put in paintings and drawings their own memories and how they felt and what they saw, and those paintings and the suffering that they conveyed, the pain and the sense of loss were almost more powerful than the photos themselves. Yet this one bomb that caused so much destruction in Hiroshima was tiny compared to today's nuclear bombs. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of just 15 kilotons of TNT, whereas today's nuclear warheads range in size from 100 kilotons to over 1 megaton. A single nuclear weapon today could kill millions in just minutes. Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core: people, buildings, life itself. The shockwave would crush structures miles away, killing and maiming countless people. And then comes the fallout. Radioactive poison spreading through the air, water, and soil, condemning survivors to agonizing deaths or lifelong suffering. A nuclear winter could follow, with smoke and ash completely blocking the sun, plunging the world into darkness and cold, killing crops and starving billions. Acid rain would scar the earth, wiping out entire ecosystems. This isn't some made-up science fiction story. This is the reality of what's at stake, what we are facing now. Because as we stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before, political elite and warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers. Perhaps it's because they are confident that they will have access to nuclear shelters for themselves and for their families that regular people won't have access to. So it's up to us, the people, to speak up and demand an end to this madness. We must reject this path to nuclear war and work toward a world where no one has to live in fear of a nuclear holocaust.
When I am agreeing with Tulsi Gabbard, you know that we are in the upside down. But everything that was articulated over the last 3.5 minutes is true. Donald Trump in 2 weeks time, is going to decide whether or not America, as part of the new axis of evil, ushers us closer to a nuclear holocaust. And for me, what stood out in that video was so much, but the fact that the destruction that was caused in Hiroshima and Nagasaki would pale in comparison to the kind of damage that would happen now. And you see, we see the headlines of all of these billionaires building their bunkers in preparation for doomsday, wanting to colonize the moon or colonize Mars. We know that they're prepared, and that's why they're so eager. But the rest of us, the rest of us will literally be left out in a nuclear winter. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moodie Show. I am so very grateful for all of you that got me over the hump of 25,000 followers. I appreciate each and every single one of you. I will be back tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern, live with Wajahat Ali for Democracy Ish. And the Danielle Moodie Show will be back live on Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern. As always, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these incredibly dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. I will see you back here, 12 p.m. Eastern. Be well.